And so the sexual value is a value. That's a good value. But the value of the person is greater. And what modesty does without speaking a word is it sets the hierarchy in place. That the value of the person is above the value of the body. So I was speaking to a bunch of 8th graders the other day, and a girl raised her hand and said, Jason, I got a question here. So my mom bought me this tank top. I think it's like the spaghetti strap tank top thing. And she's like, it's not really that modest, but, I'm not wearing it to seduce guys. Is it okay for me still wear it? My mom did give it to me. What do I do? And, aside from the fact that the mom is buying these kinds of outfits for the girls, what is the girl to do? And one of the things I pointed out to her is if in your heart you're saying, is this too tight? Is this too low? Is this too short? Typically, we've already answered our own question. And I think when a girl picks out an outfit, more often than not, she's not picking stuff out to seduce guys. Some girls, that might be their primary agenda, but for most girls, that's not on the radar. When girls typically dress, they often dress for other girls or for themselves, not so much to blatantly seduce guys. So, would it be wrong for her to put on an outfit like this? What do you say? And so here's my take. I would say, for one, I think women in general typically resent the message of modesty for a couple of really good reasons. One reason is because it's never directed towards males, right? When was the last time you heard a modesty lecture for guys? And because that doesn't happen, women kind of get defensive, when in reality, the immodesty of a guy's intentions could be far more immodest than any outfit a woman could put on. A second reason I think women resent the message of modesty is because for thousands of years, the entire problem of lust has been blamed on one thing: the body of the woman. She's the seductress. She's the occasion of sin. You were wearing that outfit. You were kind of asking for it now, weren't you? That type of attitude that has been prevalent throughout culture for thousands of years has made women understandably very kind of anaphylactic in their reactions towards the message of chastity. Because you think it through, what's the cause of robbery? Is the cause of robbery the presence of jewelry in the window of the store, or the presence of greed in the heart of the robber? Jewelry does not cause robbery. Greed does. In the same respect, the ultimate cause of lust is in the heart of the one who is lusting. Now, this is not to say, then I should just be able to dress however I want. If you got a bad imagination, that's your own problem. This type of attitude is not, I think, exactly what God is calling us to. So what's the proper response? Sarah Swafford wrote this book, Emotional Virtue, and in it she talks about when she was at Benedictine College. She was like an RD or an RA in the dorm, and this guy came up to her, and all the guys and girls would come to her with all their emotional issues and dramas and relationship challenges. And the guy said, Sarah, look, I need your input. There's this girl I'm really into, and she's got this great personality, but the way she dresses is really kind of, low cut this, tight that, frilly, And he said, look, I totally respect her. But he said, the problem is nobody else seems to. And I just wish she would just dress more modestly so people would realize there's so much more about this girl than just her body. And so Sarah said, well, why don't you talk to her about modesty? And the guy was like, no, thanks, I'll pass. And Sarah's like, no, I really think you should. And the guy was like, no, I'd rather eat my arm off than talk to her about modesty, which is a really curious expression, but clearly he wasn't interested in broaching the subject. But, Sarah persuaded him. And so he talked to her about modesty. And then Sarah bumped into the guy and said, hey, how'd the conversation go? The guy said, not so good. Sarah said, what happened? He said, well, I tried to talk to her about modesty, and all she said was, look, if you guys can't control your imagination, then that's your own problem. Now, less, than a week later, this girl comes to Sarah, totally different girl, and says, Sarah, I need your input on a relationship issue. There's this guy I really like. I think we work together, she said, and, he's really, into me, and we're flirting, and then I get back to the dorm, and he's texting me. But then when his friends are around, he kind of ghosts me, and it's like I'm invisible to him. And 1 minute, it just seems like we're almost dating. And then the next minute, it's just seems like nothing. And Sarah said, well, why don't you ask him about his intentions? And the girl's like, well, I don't want to be the girl to ask the guy if he's interested in me. It's just too awkward. And Sarah said, how long has it been going on? And the girl said 6 months. Sarah's like, it's a long time to sit around waiting for some flip-floppy, indecisive guy to make up his mind. Ask him his intentions. And so the girl did. Sarah saw her later and said, "Oh, how'd the conversation go?" And the girl said, "Not so good." Sarah said, "What happened?" And she said, "Well, I asked him what his intentions were. And he said, look, we're just friends. If you can't control your emotions, then that's your own problem." You see what's going on here? The exact same thing. We enjoy the feeling of being desired without the responsibility of the hearts, the minds, and the souls of the people that we want to desire us. And so whether it's modesty of intentions, modesty of outfit, this is something guys and girls are called to practice. So modesty when it comes to clothing, the idea behind this, St. John Paul II gave it in his book, Love and Responsibility. It's for you to sufficiently conceal the sexual values of the body so they do not eclipse the value of the person. So listen to that closely. You're not concealing the sexual value. We're to the point where I can't even tell if you're a man or a woman. It's just like you're just wearing this big curtain over yourself. No, it's just a sufficient concealment of the sexual values of the body so they don't eclipse the value of the person. And so the sexual value is a value. That's a good value. But the value of the person is greater. And what modesty does without speaking a word is it sets the hierarchy in place. That the value of the person is above the value of the body. Immodesty tends to have the opposite effect, where the sexual value comes first, and then it takes an effort of the will for the person to reorder that as an act of their own will, which is something guys should do. Now, no matter how a woman dresses, she deserves to be treated with dignity and honor. But the challenge is, I don't think that she's going to help guys to realize her own dignity until she first sees it herself. And so the whole purpose of veiling the body is not to obscure your value as a person, but to highlight it. What a veil essentially does is it doesn't take away beauty. If anything, it highlights the beauty. And so I think modesty is really a ministry of beauty because the woman is the most beautiful thing God put on earth. Nothing remotely even comes close. In his meditation on givenness, St. John Paul II himself talks about at times being dazzled by the beauty of a woman. And so what modesty does is it frames the beauty of the woman. And if you've ever had like a nice priceless work of art or whatever, some really important picture, and you want to get that framed, you take it to a store, and these like professional framers, like they know what they're doing. And it's amazing when they build a frame around it, how it just draws out things. Well, if you put this frame, you're going to see more of this color, you do that, you do that. And so it's not obscuring the beauty of the painting, it's actually highlighting it. And in the same respect, what modesty does is instead of what immodesty does, where it kind of crops down into the sexual value, it frames the whole person. And so the body is not bad. It's not dirty. Think of it like the Holy of Holies. The Holy of Holies was the most sacred place in ancient Israel. And what you had was the Ark of the Covenant, and it was behind a veil, behind another veil, and only one person, this high priest, on the Day of Atonement, after a time of purification, could enter into the Holy of Holies and just behold the glory of this unveiled mystery. In the same respect, the body of the woman is not for public consumption to view, in my opinion, of the most intimate parts of the body. I remember Wendy Shalit, she was a Jewish author, she said that a woman who's practically naked in front of strangers has little left to reveal to her lover. And so in the same respect, the woman's body, in a sense, to me, is like the Holy of Holies, that only one man who has purified himself, and then God willing on the day of their wedding, can enter into the Holy of Holies and behold the glory of this unveiled mystery. Those veils were not placed before the Holy of Holies because it was bad, because it was dirty, to just separate God from us, but if anything, to just highlight how wonderful and unique God is in the presence of Israel. And in the same respect, with your body being a temple of the Holy Spirit, modesty is not about wearing some shapeless plaid ankle-length jumper like some frumpy contest. Like, no, like you can look beautiful, just try to look classy. In a sense, I think what modesty is an invitation to contemplation. You're inviting a man to consider what you want to be loved for. Because I've always said that like what you win a man with is what you keep him with. Like if you win him with pleasure, then you have to keep him with pleasure. But like he can get pleasure anywhere. It's a repeatable asset. He could get it from another girl. He can get it on the internet. It's repeatable. If you win him with your body, then you have to keep him with your body. But here's the problem. Like every woman has a body. I can't even remember the last woman I met who did not have a body. It's a repeatable thing. But if you win him with who you are as a human being, the relationship is far more likely to go the distance. And this is why modesty is not about looking dumpy. Modesty is the guardian of love. Modesty opens up a way towards love, where you're inviting a man to not just look at you, but see you. Because I think this is the deepest ache in the human heart, is just to be seen in love. And I think in our craving to grasp for it, sometimes we satisfy for just being looked at. But what you want is to be seen. And so modesty allows you to be seen in your dignity. And so as you're trying to pick out outfits, what I would say is if you pull an outfit out of the closet and you start thinking, is this too short? Is this too tight? Is this too low? You already answered your question. Because if it were modest, you would never question it. Because the only times we make justifications is when we know we're doing what we probably shouldn't do, right? I mean, it's not like if you're doing something good, you'll make justifications or excuses. You're not going to go feed the homeless and be sitting there at the soup kitchen, serving out meatloaf thinking, well, hey, at least I'm not robbing a bank today. It's not that bad. You don't make excuses because your conscience is at rest. And so when it comes to the outfits that you're choosing, try to pick ones that will frame the beauty of you as a person rather than one that would require a man to make extra effort not to look at you as a collection of body parts and to remember your dignity. Try to make it easier on the guys, because what you ultimately want, let's just be honest, it's love. That's what you were created for. You were created by love, for love, in love. Nothing else will satisfy you. And so modesty, as I had mentioned, is this guardian of love. And so when you're picking that outfit, don't just think of, what are the guys going to think? What are the other girls going to think? What am I going to think? You ultimately have to think, what is God going to think? I was reading a book yesterday. Padre Pio was writing a letter to one of his spiritual children. And in it, he mentioned to her that Jesus once said to Saint Catherine, you should think about Jesus because he's always thinking about you. And when I hit that line in adoration, it's just one of those lines that kind of just, I can't go on. I have to stop. I need to ruminate on this. Wait a minute. God is always thinking about you. Sit in that for a little bit. Because a lot of people have, whether they know it or not, a deist understanding of God. He's kind of like the clockmaker, the watchmaker. He kind of creates the universe, and then he just kind of sets it into place, into motion, and then he just backs off until it just winds itself down. And a lot of people think that way about God. I know he created all this stuff, but he's not really part of my life. I don't know if he listens to me. Even when I pray, I don't know if he listens, because I've been asking him for this and that thing's not going away, and this issue still persists. We wonder, is he really there? But imagine this. God is always watching you. Now, some people hear that and like, oh, great, this big eye in the sky always looking out for me. No. How does he see his daughter? How does he see his son? How is it that he's looking at you? In Mass, I was sitting with my wife, Kristalina, and we're 1 or 2 rows behind this dad, relatively young dad with a young daughter. And this girl was probably 2 years old. And it was so fun to watch. She's climbing all over him. She was like looking in his ears. Then she starts pulling on his ears, and he's just sitting there. And it's like 30 seconds, and she's just pulling it, and he won't do anything. So she's like, she like licks his ear, and he's like, okay, enough, honey. All right. But it was almost like if you've seen the wildlife, video footage of like a huge African lion, and he's just sitting there because they just like sleep 23 hours a day, I guess. And then the cubs are like climbing on it and like chewing on its tail and pulling on it, and it's just sitting there and just utter patience. And, I'm sure it crosses my mind, like I could eat you, but I love you, so I'm not going to do that. But watching this father, it was almost like this. The daughter was so safe in the presence of a man who was so big, could be so dangerous, but he was so safe, and she could just blossom in his presence and just be so safe in the shadow of his arms. Imagine the way that father looks upon his daughter with just absolute adoring tenderness. Imagine the Blessed Trinity looking at you like that all day. It's almost uncomfortable. For me as a man, I want God to fit in my head. And he doesn't for some reason. The only place God can fit is into your heart. And so in the head, this idea that the Blessed Trinity looking upon me all day long with adoring love, it's like you almost want to reject it. It's just like that's too much to even take in. Because if he's looking at me like that, the way that I look at my kids after they go to bed, and I'll just kind of peek in their room, and there's a little Lewis, and he's 5 years old, and his beautiful little almond brown eyes are closed, and I can see his chest rising up and down, and as he's breathing deeply as he's sleeping, and I'm just fascinated by this little, just amazing little beautiful child. And imagine God looking at you with that kind of love. Let that sink in. And then imagine, okay, if he's looking at me, I need to think of him more. If he's always thinking about me, I want to think about him. I want to think about him as I'm picking out an outfit, as I'm going on a date, as I'm choosing what to watch on TV, picking a song I want to listen to or working out or whatever. Am I thinking about him? And so it's not about him just always looking upon you with disappointment. Oh, there she goes again, whatever. That's not the Father that we have. Imagine him looking at you with love, thinking of you with love. Think of him with love when you choose those outfits, because you have, as a woman, a ministry of beauty. And you might think, no, because I'm not as beautiful as this person. No, you're not. I'm sorry. There's only one woman who gets to be the most beautiful. It's the Virgin Mary. That's it. After that, everybody gets second or third place or whatever. So it's not about like, I'm not going to be the most beautiful. No, you're not. I'm not going to be the most handsome. It's just the sooner we can come to grips with that with reality, the better. But nonetheless, you've been given some type of beauty. Mother Teresa, in her own way, was incredibly beauty. You have the capacity to dazzle. You have the ability to turn a man's head, but you also have the power to change his heart. So lead their hearts to heaven. By the way that you dress, by the way that you dance. This is not a condemnation. It is a calling to educate man. It was the philosopher Soren Kierkegaard who once said that woman is the conscience of man. This is not to say, well, it's your job to be the chastity cop. No, it's that a man will be as much of a gentleman as a woman requires. And if a woman set the standard high, men collectively can rise up to that standard. And so it's not that it's your job, as I said, to be our chastity cop. No matter how a woman dresses, she deserves to be treated with dignity and honor. If there's a woman walking down the street whose poor life has been reduced to a life of prostitution and she just needs to dress that particular way to get business, to put food on the table for her single, her only kid, because the dad, who knows the story behind her. But if I see her walking down the street, a man should be able to use the exercise of his will to see the dignity that she deserves and as his respected and beloved companion, instead of something to be consumed. And so no matter how you dress, as I've said again and again, you deserve respect. But when you dress in a way that is modest, it frames the beauty of womanhood so you can lead our hearts to the ultimate source of beauty, which is where you got your beauty, which is the Blessed Trinity himself. All you are in your beauty is a fragment of the infinite. And that is a great responsibility. It's almost like if I had a diamond and I shine light on it, it'd sparkle all over the room. All of that sparkles to me is like all of the points of beauty that God has created in the universe, you being one of them. But shine, absolutely shine, but do so in a modest way, because that will give all glory to God rather than yourself. And then I think you'll discover what you're really aching for, as I had mentioned, is not to be looked at, but to be seen in love. And so what do you guys think? Let me know. Put your comments below. Is this like horrible rant against women and just blaming them for men's problems? Or is this a new way to look at modesty? Leave your comments below. Let's talk. Let's discuss. Put the comments in. I'd be happy to reply. In the meantime, if this has been helpful, please comment on it. Please like. By you just interacting with the video in that way, it drives it up the algorithm at YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're watching, and it shows it to more people. And so please interact with the video. Let us know what you think. Also, if this is helpful, please consider supporting us. We have a community at Patreon of the people who are behind the entire program that through their monthly gifts of $5 or $20 or whatever have been able to allow us to afford that camera and this microphone and that light. They're the ones running the entire show. And so we could always use more help to keep this thing going and to support the family. And so if you just go to patreon.com/Jason Evert, you'll be able to join the community and help keep up what we're doing. Also, if you want to learn more, I'd mentioned St. John Paul II in his book, Love and Responsibility. My favorite way to unpack his teaching is like he did, not just in a university classroom, but in the outdoors. He would bring portions of the manuscript he was writing, Love and Responsibility, into the wilderness and the mountains of Poland and invite young people, college students, young adults, singles to go hiking with him. And then he'd teach them from that manuscript. And so trying to continue the spirit of St. John Paul II, that's what we're doing. Our next one is going to be like in 2 weeks in Yosemite. We've got another one coming up in Switzerland in July. If you want to hike the Swiss Alps, we still have like 20 spots left on that trip that we just released. Just go to jp2trails.com and join us. We're going to hike the Swiss Alps and camp in the most beautiful lakes you've ever seen in your life, and the mountaintops. And then late July, we're going to head over to Italy for the canonization of Blessed Pier Giorgio Frassati. This one's open to all families as well as singles, grandparents, you name it. I think there's still 20 spots left on that one. I think 60 of the 80 spots are taken, but some new hotel rooms opened up. We're going to hike in the Dolomites. We're going to go to the canonization in Rome. We're going to be able to see Venice and go kayaking out there, see St. John Bosco. I mean, all kinds of really cool stuff. So if you're interested, go to jp2trails.com. You can learn about St. John Paul the Great and the beautiful gift that he has given to the church in his book, Love and Responsibility. But God bless you. Please pray for us and be assured of our prayers in return.